I loved writing it. It was interesting because during the first lockdown, I'd been writing pieces for one of my young students. He was only 10, and so he was a complete beginner. So I said I'd write him a piece every week, a little study that went from almost open strings up to D major and things like that. But I was able to introduce sulfonticello, collegno, Bartok pizzicato, false harmonics. So even youngsters can start playing these things, and then they don't become an issue.
Welcome to episode 64 of the Bass Shed Podcast. My name is Ryan Roberts. LemurMusic.com. Everything you need for the double bass can be found at LemurMusic.com. Basses, bows, strings, sheet music, accessories, pickups, preamps, amps, bags, cases, everything you need for the double bass. LemurMusic.com. TsunamiCables.com, hands down my favorite cables on the market. You can listen to my talk with the owner of Tsunami Cables, Keith Sticks, on episode 51 of the Bass Shed Podcast. We talk about the cable company. We also talk about the V15 preamp released by Tsunami. You can use the promo code TheBassShed, all one word, at Tsunami Cables for 10% off. TsunamiCables.com. Trickfish Amplifiers, www.trickfishamps.com. I play their dual channel preamp, the Trilobite. It is also an AB box and makes doubling on a gig so efficient, and I can dial in a great sound on both instruments. Click the switch, boom, onto the other bass. It's amazing. Trickfishamps.com. Use promo code TheBassShed, all one word, for 10% off. All right, on the show is double bassist, educator, composer, performer, David Hayes. I originally came across David from something that was posted on the Double Bass blog publications. The Double Bass blog is Jason Heath's blog and publications. You know, it's all kind of right there in the name. But, I appreciate Jason for naming it so clearly. Jason is the host of Contrabass Conversations, that podcast. He is a friend of the Bass Shed along with his team. Also, his team member Trevor Jones is a friend of the Bass Shed. And so I check into what they're doing regularly. And that's how I came across David Hayes. You can get to Jason Heath's Double Bass blog by going to thebassshed.com. Click on the tab that says Double Bass Resources, and there's a link there. But while I was there, I came across David Hayes' a posting about a book he wrote. The book he wrote is called Aiming High, 12 Thumb Position Pieces for the Double Bass. I read a little bit about the book. I was interested. I started looking more into David Hayes and different publications that he has done. That led me to his website, recitalmusic.net, that has a ton of publications for the double bass in different kind of contexts. There's solo double bass. There's publications for 2 double basses, 3, 4, double bass and piano, double bass and voice. So I highly recommend stopping by to check out recitalmusic.net. There's so much. Where do I start? The UK has a rating system for skill levels that I have not been aware of. Maybe it's because of America. Maybe it's because of me. I don't know, but I didn't know about it. So him and I discussed that, and that gives a little bit more insight and a little bit more context to what you're going to find on his website. I highly recommend stopping by and checking it out. There's something there for everybody at all levels. All right, just a little bit about David. David Hayes has studied the double bass at the Royal College of Music in London and completed his postgraduate studies in Prague with the principal bassist of the Czech Philharmonic Orchestra. No disrespect to the principal bassist of the Czech Philharmonic Orchestra. I just can't pronounce his name. He has given recitals, David has given recitals and masterclasses in 20 countries over the past few years and has been a juror at a number of international competitions, 3 times as a chairman. David's collaborative work gained him a prestigious award from David Walter, the Charitable Trust of New York, for his pioneering activities as a soloist, teacher, publisher, and commissioner of new music for the double bass. David works with composers throughout the world to expand the double bass repertoire by commissioning new music and rediscovering forgotten pieces. Since 1983, more than 700 works have been written for David, music from 1 to 20 basses and from beginner to virtuoso levels. In addition, he has premiered 10 contemporary concertos with orchestra. You know, that's just impressive. Like, I don't care. That's just crazy impressive. David is a lovely human. I had a great time talking to him. He's just so passionate about the double bass history, and communicating this both through music and to his students. He's going to talk about all that. Here is my talk with double bassist and publisher David Hayes. David, how are you?
Very well, thanks, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing well. Now, I am notorious for screwing up the pronunciation of last names. So, set me straight right before we get going here.
Yeah, Hayes. Okay.
Yeah. Great. I can remember that. Okay? I can remember that. There's been a couple guests. I'm just like, I didn't even touch it. I don't even touch it. There was a Turkish guy. He's a friend of mine, but I'm like, dude, I have no idea how to say your last name, and we've been friends for years.
Yeah, it can be a nightmare, can't it?
Yeah, it can. How you doing, man?
Very well. And you?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for doing this. You posted.
Thank you for the invitation. That's really very kind of you.
Oh man, my pleasure. I was really intrigued by a book that I saw you posted on the Double Bass blog. Jason Heath and Trevor over there, they're friends of mine, and they're friends of the Bass Shed. Aiming High, 12 thumb position pieces for double bass. I do want to talk about this. I also want to talk about a large collection of work you have. Your website, your publishing company, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. I was snooping around on there. I have questions about that too. Actually, let's start there. There's when it would say the level for some of the pieces on there was a numbering system. I'm not familiar with that. What would be the prerequisites for maybe a level 6 or 7?
In the UK, there are some examination boards, and we all follow these examinations.
Okay.
And in fact, I think the exams are exported to about 100 countries. It's been going for over 100 years. But I think not to America. I think maybe some America.
Okay.
But something like grade 8, everyone aspires to get to grade 8, which used to be very high level. But that would include things like Cimador Concerto, maybe Capuzzi. I think Botticini Reverie is on there. So the level is just pushing a little bit. So grade 1 would be maybe first position, open strings, and you have to play pieces and scales, oral tests, sight reading, things like that. And because I'm in England, and most of our customers are from UK, it made sense to stick with the grading system. Okay.
Yeah, that was fascinating to me because it was helpful when looking through a bunch of pieces. I'm not well versed on classical repertoire. I mainly play jazz. On acoustic. I also play electric, and that's, popular music, all that stuff. So when reading through it, and, I am actually looking for some stuff to be practicing and playing in pieces and etudes. And so that was helpful. I just didn't understand it. And I had never come across that before.
This was something that was interesting with Jason and Trevor. We were talking about this, trying to find a system which is universal.
Yeah.
And I think they decided beginner, intermediate, advanced, virtuoso.
Yeah.
So beginner would be, I think, Up to the Elephant by Saint-Saëns.
Okay.
Intermediate would be up to Botticini Elegy.
Okay.
So it's things like that. So it just gives you an idea. Because sometimes people email me and they'll say, I can play this piece, I can't play that piece. Can you suggest some pieces that you publish?
Yeah.
And if I know the ability that they are, I can suggest pieces. But the other thing I always tried to do with the publishing was include a written program note, so you got some idea about the piece. Yeah. And there are also a few pages of music.
Yeah.
So at least you can see what grade 7 looks like or grade 5 looks like.
Right. And now where would you rate the Aiming High book?
Oh, so that's beyond grade 8, really. Okay. Because that I think I put it into I think it's intermediate. I think I put it for the bass log publications.
Okay.
It's sort of intermediate advanced. It's not so difficult, but if you're not well versed in thumb position, it's really quite difficult.
Sure. You have to at least have that together. Yeah, I had looked at the kind of excerpt that was up there, and I'm like, okay, like rhythmically, this doesn't seem too challenging. The little clip, that was up there, I think the highest note I saw was an F.
I kept it fairly simple.
Yeah.
Because I knew the next book was going to be harmonics.
Okay.
So therefore, I didn't really use too many harmonics.
Right.
But I've been a teacher for 30 something years. I can't remember now. So I know what works. I know, and hopefully in my music, I can hide all the technical issues.
Right.
In the music, so the students don't know they're learning technical things.
Sure.
But the teachers can see straight away.
Right. Right.
And we play, as you know, we play hand shapes. So I'm always thinking about where I am on the bass, which notes I've got in my hand. So I'm hoping that they really are useful. Just for learning the geography of the fingerboard, working on different keys, different hand shapes.
Yeah. I almost kind of held off on having our talk until I got a copy of the book. I was going to order one because I wanted to play through it and have some, some context for it, some firsthand working. I still plan on getting a copy. It looks interesting to me.
I loved writing it. It was interesting because during the first lockdown, I've been writing pieces for one of my young students. He was only 10.
Okay.
And within a few months, we went into lockdown, so all the lessons were online.
Yeah.
And so he was a complete beginner. So I said I'd write him a piece every week, a little study. And I think I wrote 12 that went from almost open strings up to D major and things like that. But I was able to introduce sul ponticello, col legno, bartok pizzicato, false harmonics.
Okay.
So even youngsters can start playing these things.
Nice.
And then they don't become an issue.
Right.
Because when I was learning, we just did Samandel and traditional things, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's still great music, It
is, and the way that Samandel has organized all that foundational information is really concise. I think playing through just the exercises in the book can be a little dry. I think
he was a pioneer of his day. He suddenly put all this music together. But we did all these studies, and I don't even remember it being boring. I just remembered, I couldn't wait for the next one. I was so excited. But in 2022, I do agree, it's complete. Times have changed.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was going through it. I gravitated to acoustic double bass later in life. I think it was 20. And I was already playing professionally on electric, but then I really dove deep into double bass. That transition was difficult because, I mean, I do you play electric bass?
No, I have students to do.
Okay. Because there's in your mind, you can get ideas out, and it's not that physically demanding, and you don't have to deal about intonation and all these things. And so, then just playing a G major scale just sounds awful. And it was really discouraging. So there was that when I was going through it. But I used to slave away at that and some other etude studies.
Yeah. So I started, so this became The Adventures of George.
Mm-hmm.
And Susan Hagen, my great friend in Boston, she asked me if I'd write a book a little bit more advanced. So it's using the position around the neck, but still remaining in bass clef. So that became George's Grand Tour. Nice. And then she asked me for another book, which was going in and out of thumb position, because that was another issue. Yeah. So that was Scaling the Heights.
Yeah.
And then she asked me for Aiming High, which was just composition. And then I've just finished Bass, The Final Frontier, which is all harmonics.
Okay. Now when you're consolidating the information to get in and out of thumb position, how much do you pull from the Petrarchy stuff?
We use all the handshakes he uses, which are again, he was a pioneer because a friend of mine said he didn't devise anything new, but he brought it all together.
Sure.
Because I can remember when I was playing in thumb position, we had no idea what we were doing at the time. This was early 1980s.
Okay.
And we didn't use thumb really, apart from on harmonics. And then suddenly this book came and there was a system and there were handshapes and it started to make sense.
Yeah.
And I use all the handshapes now with my students, plus some more I devised as well. So in and out of thumb position, I'm thinking about, I mainly work in scales because these are teaching pieces.
Sure.
So I'm always thinking in scales, in terms of scales and arpeggios.
Yeah.
But also how to make it interesting.
Right.
And what I quite liked with Scaling the Heights, I did 24. So it's one in every major and minor key. And the key dictated the sort of style of music, which was nice. But I found I was writing happy pieces for major keys and sad pieces for minor keys. So
Sure.
I changed it around. And I wrote a piece, I think it was B flat minor. It's the happiest piece I've ever written. It's unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. But it was so interesting to find new ways of saying the same thing.
Sure.
But I was really pleased. But each key has its own peculiarities or things to commend it. So that was interesting. In fact, I was teaching a student today, one of my adult students. He was playing 3 of them today, and I'd forgotten about that. You can't remember what you write.
Right.
And we were playing through. I said, these are not so bad.
Now, what did you? How did you extract a happy piece from a minor key?
I think it's the rhythm.
Okay.
So it doesn't sound minor, even though it is. It's
right.
It was interesting how even a flat key, 5 flats, if you write it in the best register and it's moving by step, it can still sound really nice.
Yeah.
I can remember Simandl in D flat. It was horrible because it was just an etude.
Right.
But I tried to make them musical as well, so that students didn't realize what they were learning.
Sure. I think that's that works on a couple frontiers, because you not only don't realize what you're learning, but you're also practicing musicality. And you're not necessarily just focused on phrasing or a musicality thing. When what you're practicing is a musical piece, then you're automatically getting that out of it. And that's automatically more beneficial than just sawing away at scales in different patterns.
The one thing I tell my students always is to always make a good sound and always shape and mold every phrase.
Sure.
So it's the best piece in the world. So if you can make a scale sound like it's Mozart, when you play Mozart, it's really easy.
Right. Yeah, right.
Because it's already there. But the quality of sound and the musicianship is so important. It's something I teach all the time, whatever level of student. I want them to really make music. Because I always say, do you want to be a musician or do you want to be a bass player? And a musician will play the music and a bass player will play the notes.
Right.
And I want my students to be musicians.
Yeah. Is this how you got into composition? Was through writing practice exercises for yourself or for students?
No, I always thought I had no skill. I've only been composing for 9 years.
Okay.
I went for a job. It was head of strings in Birmingham, Royal Conservatoire there. And I got down to the last 2. And I didn't get the job, but it was all fair and square. It was all really good. With hindsight, it was the right decision. So I had some time on my hands. And I just thought, I'll start writing a piece for each of my students. But nothing to lose. Yeah. So I wrote a piece for each of them. And I showed them to other friends. And I said, I like that. Could I have a copy? And then someone else said, would you write me a piece Yeah, of course I will. I've got nothing to lose.
Right.
I think in my early 50s. So I just did it, and I started writing. And then suddenly I thought, wow, I enjoy writing this. And I've worked with so many great composers, and I've edited so much music that I think I've had the best tuition that money hasn't paid for. It's been absolutely amazing.
Right.
Really.
Go ahead.
Because I've always made music work. Again, that's something you teach your students.
Sure. Sometimes
you have a piece which doesn't quite work, but your job as a musician is to turn lead into gold.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to do. It's often on a daily basis.
Yeah. Exactly. I forgot what I was going to ask now.
Sorry.
No. Don't worry about it. Let's rewind. When did you start playing? What's kind of your musical background?
Yeah, there was no music in my family at all.
Really?
But my nan had a piano.
Okay.
So I was always playing the piano. And when I was about 6 or 7, I started playing the recorder and guitar. And then I went to, we call it secondary school, age 11.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I started playing the drums. And then at age 14, there was a notice, and it said free double bass lessons. I think it was double bass and bassoon. Because we had no bassoon or bass players. So I went to a meeting. I signed up. All the lessons were free in those days. The government paid for them. And so I just started the next week. And once I picked up the bass, I knew that was it. That was. Yeah. I played lots of instruments, but this was it. And it was like, I always say it's like a drug.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm an addict. And it's got worse, never mind.
No, it does. It escalates.
Yeah, so that was age 14.
Okay.
But also in my day, there were no mini basses, no small instruments.
Okay.
So you had to be a certain height to play the bass we had at school. It was as simple as that.
Now, I remember school basses were not the most easy basses to navigate. The 40-year-old strings or something, and minimal upkeep, kept in terrible climate conditions. And the bass
I played on had gut strings, but really old gut strings.
Oof.
And when they start unwinding, it was like that.
Oh man!
But I think my dad bought a bass for me. I think it was what was it, $200.
Okay.
I think he bought it from school, and then I think we put new strings on it, and it sounded okay. And then he bought another one for me.
That must have just felt like magic, huh? When you got like your first set of
new
strings.
Have your own bass.
That and like have new strings on it. Like, oh my gosh, like it can feel like this. This is amazing.
But I think I just didn't care. I just loved it. Nothing would have stopped me, if I'm honest.
I love it.
It's amazing, isn't it, when you look back and you think about the terrible instrument, terrible strings, probably terrible bow as well. But I didn't know that, and I just loved lessons. I'm still in contact with my first bass teacher.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we met up again last year. I hadn't seen him for a long time, and he was great. He was always enthusiastic, and he just gave me what I needed. I think I had natural ability. And I just needed guiding. I didn't know anything, but he was fantastic. He really started me off well.
Nice. What kind of, so you were going through Simandl then? After Simandl, what did you get into in your early days?
It was Simandl because that was the only book we had at school.
Yeah. So were you working on any kind of pieces in conjunction with that?
So again, we worked through the grade system. So we had pieces from, again, in 1974, there wasn't much published for bass. Yeah. Certainly not much music for younger players. There was some music by Ida Carroll, who you've probably never heard of. She was a bass player, a bit of a composer in the UK, and she published a few pieces. But there really wasn't very much at all. But the Associated Board, these were the exams we did. And they produced a syllabus for all instruments.
Okay.
And you could see all the pieces on each grade. And you had to choose 3 pieces from each. There's 3 lists, one from each list. And once I got a copy of that, I just started buying everything on the book, everything for double bass.
Yeah.
So I used to know before my teacher what I was going to play. I'd gone to music courses and summer schools and things. I'd take my music, And the teachers there would guide me, and they would say, "Oh no, this is a better piece." So I'd go back to lessons. "Oh no, I'm playing this piece." And my teacher was so lovely.
Yeah.
He just let me change pieces. He was really very easygoing, which was perfect.
Nice.
But there wasn't much, and then I think because of Gary Carr, then there was the Eccles Sonata, and then I think we played Block Prayer, Bottesini Elegy, Reverie, things like that. But lots of transcriptions, maybe Vivaldi, sonatas, Marcello sonatas. But I'd also seen York edition. Rodney Slatford had started York edition in 1969. And he commissioned many pieces and published all these things. And really that was the inspiration. Even at school, I was thinking about starting a publishing company.
Oh, wow.
But I just didn't know how to do it. But I knew he'd done it.
Yeah,
so therefore it was possible.
Okay.
And I'd bought a record of Ludwig Streicher, the great Viennese player. I think I was 17 or 18. I'd gone down to London for a lesson. And I bought this record. I had no money left for food or drink or anything. This was my second bass record. Yeah. And he was playing Bottesini. And he was playing all the pieces. I'd seen the music, never heard anybody play it. I didn't know if anybody could, because I certainly couldn't.
Yeah.
And he was playing it. And I worked out he wasn't superhuman, he was human.
Yeah.
And if he could do it, I could do it.
Right.
And all you'd have to do is work out how.
Yeah.
But he showed it was possible.
So it seems like both within your bass playing and within starting a publishing company, all you needed to know that it was obtainable. Soon as you realized it was obtainable, you automatically, your name was in the hat too. And why shouldn't I also obtain? Is this something that was instilled from your folks and from your family, that there's this really sense of you can do anything, empowerment?
Yeah, my parents were loving, and my dad was quite independent. He didn't like working for people. He preferred working for himself, and I think that's maybe where I got it from.
Sure.
But I don't know. I always had this feeling I wanted to try and make a difference.
Yeah.
And I don't know where it came from or anything. But once I found the bass, that seemed to be the way forward for me. Yeah. And I used to go to summer schools, and I'd see what other people were doing, and then I'd want some of that.
Right.
And I'm a quick learner, and I listen and I read, and I take it all in, for any instrument, because I'm always thinking, how can I use that information? What can I do with it? And starting a publishing company, that was 1986. And at that time, there were no computers. Everything was hand engraved, which was really expensive. The other version we used was a thing called Notaset.
Okay.
And it's transfers. So you have the manuscript paper, and you have all the notes and note heads and sharps and things on which you just trace onto the manuscript paper. So I used to pay someone, that was about $25 a page. So in 1986, it was quite expensive. Yeah. So we had to just publish very short pieces. I didn't have any money.
Right.
And then also, you suddenly have all these pieces. How do you sell them? I have no idea at all.
Right. So what's the house like during this time? You just have sheet music and books and boxes of books everywhere.
Changed. Yeah, it hasn't changed. Ask my wife.
Yeah.
Because I'm always working on 25 projects.
Sure. No, me too.
Yeah, which I really enjoy. I like the variety.
Similar. I like the variety, and then I think I don't know when to say stop. And just let me get these done before I add on something else, because I always have an idea about the next thing without making sure the first one's fully wrapped up.
And then what I will do is one day I have to finish 2 or 3 things. Okay. I have to get them finished. Yeah. So I'll then focus on those until they're finished, and then I'll start another 10 projects.
Yeah, right.
But I enjoy it. It's there's always something interesting, I find.
Sure. What are the projects right now? What are you working on right now?
I've just decided to start publishing some Baroque music. We don't publish much Baroque music. And I think there's a lot of really fantastic sonatas which will work well for bass. Maybe not Marcello or Vivaldi, something new. Mm-hmm. Maybe which are not so well known. And now we're working with double bass block publications. It's so easy to have both piano parts in both tunings, and have a bass part with fingerings and bowings and a bass part which is clean.
Sure.
Because it's just a download now. It's everything is changing, which is really good for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's that one. Bottesini, I've got some Bottesini things still to publish. Because I studied in Prague, I'm really interested in Czech music and finding lots of old Czech pieces which either nobody knows about or have never been published. So I'm working on music by Kukinka, who I think last year he would have been 150.
Oh, wow.
Which is interesting. And I've got copies of manuscripts, music by Czerny.
Where do you come across these old manuscripts?
Well, some of the Czech ones are when I studied in Prague.
Okay.
They made copies for me. And then sometimes you buy them. Sometimes I find it online. Sometimes I'll mention it to a friend and say, I've got a copy of that. And as long as it's out of copyright,
right.
And I'm quite happy. Because some of this music, I think, deserves a second chance.
Sure.
There's some nice music out there. And it's not all Mozart. It's not all Beethoven. But it's still good music.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's an attraction. I know I'm personally attracted to things that aren't the first stop. Like if it's whatever the kind of the other thing is, that's probably the thing I'm more interested in. I always want to know what's kind of on the side over here, not whatever everybody else is doing. So I feel like there's going to be some people that are going to be interested in playing all that and listening to it because it's just something else.
Yeah, because everybody made a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Simandl was a great one for getting friends to write pieces for bass.
Yeah.
And he wrote original repertoire. He transcribed a lot of music. Mm-hmm. And for every Mozart, there has to be lots of Dittersdorfs and Van Hals and Schmergers.
Sure.
It's just how it is.
Right.
But Dittersdorf wrote some lovely music, very happy, very well crafted music. Van Hal is as close to Mozart as we get as bass players.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I like, and certainly if they're bass player composers, because they've all made a difference to where we are today.
Absolutely.
And I think that's fascinating. And I like celebrating these forgotten bass players and composers. I think it cost me a bit of time, that's all.
Yeah. When I was on your website, recitalmusic.net, I got that right. Yeah, I got that right. I want to make sure I want to say it correctly. I was on. It's a very extensive catalog of music. And then I really liked the page on bass history. I was reading through that a lot because that music and that all that stuff is not something I'm well versed in, that much. I've played a little bit of it here and there, and I'm kind of looking just so that, I don't get atrophy and can kind of keep things together a little bit. But that's not what I do, professionally. But I was excited about your passion for it because I have what I maybe is a similar passion as it relates to, American music and jazz and the history and the people that aren't maybe the most popular names, but they're all part of the lexicon of it all. And they've all influenced someone in some way. And they're all a part of this. And that's all really exciting to me. I really nerd out on all that stuff.
I've always been fascinated by the history, by the players and composers. I'm never interested in basses. I don't care who it's made by or what it's made of. That's not my passion. My passion is the repertoire and the players and composers.
Yeah.
And that started, I think, quite early, probably my teens, really. I was always reading, always interested.
Yeah.
And I was always writing. I'm a musician. I'm not a writer, but I've done so much of it. I've got some kind of idea how to write now.
Sure.
When I read professional writers, I can see the technique there, which I don't have.
Yeah.
But I'm okay. It's it could be worse. But then the internet changed everything.
Sure. everything.
Because suddenly I was able to write what I wanted. And I went onto Facebook. I was never going to go onto Facebook. And my daughter signed me up for it.
Okay.
And it's the best thing I've ever done. And if you use it properly, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It puts you in contact with so many people, people like yourself all over the world. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think so too. I mean, any of that stuff, and it's, I guess, like anything in the world, it's whatever you want it to be, you can find that there. You know, If you want it to be a way to connect with peers and people that are like-minded, great, you can find that. If you want to use, the power of the internet for evil, you can find that there too.
Exactly.
So it's whatever you want it to be. You can pretty much find the things there.
I wrote a series called A History of the Bass in 100 Pieces. Mm-hmm. When I'm driving around, I always have the radio on, which is my passion.
Okay.
And we have a BBC radio station called Radio 4, which is quite serious. And I think the director of the British Museum in London, he did a series called A History of the World in 100 items. Okay. And he just chose 100 items from their collection and did a 15-minute piece about it on radio. And it was absolutely fascinating because you never knew what it was going to be. It could be anything. It could be 1,000 years old. It could be 50 years old. It was absolutely fascinating. So I decided to write A History of the Bass in 100 pieces.
Okay.
And I just chose 100 interesting pieces with a story to tell.
Yeah.
Some are well-known, some are standard repertoire, some are things that I like. And I did that. Then I started doing History of the Bass in 100 transcriptions.
Okay.
I think that one's only got to about 25 or something. I sort of lost interest. That one. And then I've been writing blogs for Bass Magazine online.
Okay.
I've probably done about 20 blogs there.
Oh, cool.
And the most recent one is about Edward Nanny, who was he taught Paris Conservatoire.
Yeah, I was playing through his was it 28 etude book? Yeah, the virtuoso really one.
Well, this year he would have been 150.
Oh wow!
So therefore, I've just edited his concerto. That's going onto the site in February.
Cool.
And then some other things. And they did an Andy Warhol, because I think the picture I sent them of Nanny was quite small.
Yeah.
So they did about 8, all in different colours. It's fascinating. I wish I had that skill to do that.
Bringing Nanny into the 60s.
Exactly. It's fantastic. But again, Edward Nanny was important.
Yeah.
He's not Ravel or Debussy, but even so, he's part of us and where we came from.
Sure.
And a lot of the studies and etudes, it's still valuable today.
I think all of it is, yeah. Yeah, I think absolutely all of it is.
I think some of the fingerings are a little old-fashioned, but not all. Some are still relevant today.
Okay, I can't recall what they were in that book. Due to an unfortunate ex-roommate debacle, all my stuff was in storage and he didn't pay the bill, and like all my stuff got auctioned off. Oh, no. And so with that, a bunch of my etude books and bass books and stuff left me some years ago. So I don't remember the fingerings, but I remember it taught me a lot. That first piece of the virtuoso just really taught me how to shift.
Yeah, that's C major.
Just C major, just like 16th notes up and down. I really got shifting together from that one, and some shifting exercises I was working on at the time.
During the first lockdown, it's 2 years ago now, I think we had a 3-week holiday before I started teaching. So I just got all my study books out, things I hadn't used for years and years. And I did 3 hours a day just working on studies and pieces. Yeah. And it was beautiful weather here.
Okay.
It was really nice. And you couldn't go out. So had lots of time at home. We didn't waste any time traveling, which was actually quite nice. But I went to all my study books, by Nanny and all the Czech repertoire and Mengele, who else? Billet. So it was fascinating. I've just done Simandl Book 2 again.
Okay.
Last time I did that was about 19.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating because I just love learning. If I'm honest.
Sure. Yeah, it's kind of cool to go back and just check in. just play through it again for nostalgia's sake.
Yeah.
There's something rewarding to that. Mm-hmm. So at what age did you get your first professional job?
I graduated from the Royal College of Music in 1983 when I was 23. So what was before then? I was teaching. I had a job 2 hours a week. I was in London, and a friend had this job, and she got a job in an orchestra. So she said, "Did I want this job?" And of course I said, "Yeah, of course I'll take it." I'd never taught before. I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah. It was a really quite a tough school, if I'm honest.
Okay.
And I was terrified every time I walked through the school gates. It was amazing. But the kids were great, and I learned quickly, and I learned that I have a passion for teaching, and I think I'm not so bad at it.
Yeah.
And I can enthuse, and I'm never lost for something to say. I hope that my passion for the bass comes through to my students. I'm sure to them, they can't believe how enthusiastic I am at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm teaching tomorrow at 8 o'clock, and at 8:30 we have bass ensemble.
Okay.
And by 8:30 I'm buzzing. I'm like, wow, I can't believe this.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Is that all natural? You got some coffee in you? What's happening there?
What's that?
You got some coffee? Or is that all just natural enthusiasm?
Both. But I do like coffee as well. Yeah. I always take coffee with me.
Good. Yeah, I don't know anybody that's naturally enthusiastic at 8:30 in the morning.
Oh, I am.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So you started the publishing company in 86? Is that correct? Okay.
I just come back from Prague. I studied the first time with Frantisek Posta in Prague. And then I brought some music back from me, which wasn't available in the West. And then a friend and I just sort of started putting it together. And then he put a bit of money in to help me. Okay. But then just backed away. He wasn't interested. He was a doctor, a neurologist.
Okay.
I'm a bass player. So I then just took it on, and just little by little, just built it up. But for a long time, not much happened.
Yeah.
But then I met other people who were publishing, and I learned from them, and we talked. What we've got right, what we've got wrong, how to improve things, and then it just went from there to.
How I don't know anything about that process. What is that process like if you have a piece of sheet music and you want to publish it through your publishing company? Besides registering it with a copyright, is that a tedious process, or what else is there to get it published?
Is there a copyright attached to the music in the first place?
Sure, of course.
If there isn't, it's really easy. It's public domain.
Oh yeah.
But if it's a piece of Mozart which you've edited, then Mozart is out of copyright, but your edition is still copyright.
Right.
But also the copyright laws we have in Europe are different to the ones in the US.
I did not know
there are lots of different things. And when we first started, it used to be life plus 50 years.
Okay.
But then it changed to 70 years. So some pieces we published suddenly went back into copyright. But I think it was just more trouble than it was worth to do anything about it. So they just left it.
It seems like such a niche thing that I don't feel like, too many people are going to come knocking on your door about it. If there's some kind of crossover.
If it's Andrew Lloyd Webber or Paul McCartney,
sure,
it's big money.
Right,
double bass music. It's not big money.
No. I think what would probably happen is like, really? That stuff's copywritten? That's what I think they'd say.
But I do wait for things to come out of copyright.
Okay.
Because Prokofiev is, I think 1954. So that's end of 2024. So he's one I'm looking for. And there are a couple of others. I can't remember who else. But you just wait.
Yeah.
To decide the copyright.
Yeah. When looking at your website, and let's take someone like me, and I'm also asking because of me, but someone else that might hear this and go by the website, there's so much sheet music. There's stuff for bass players obviously on there, solo, double bass, all these things. Where to start? Where would you recommend if I don't have a teacher giving me direction or kind of prescribing something who knows, the skill level? If I have a fair understanding about how I can play and what I can accomplish, where to start? What would be some, like, maybe some of the pieces you'd recommend for like an intermediate, some that are in the intermediate category, and then some that are in the advanced category, and some that are in the virtuoso category?
Yeah, I always revert back to the grade system, because it's such a good system.
It seems like it's way more detailed than beginner, intermediate,
something
advanced.
I think grade 6 has the elephant.
Okay.
So you'll have 30 pieces round about that level.
Yeah.
Give or take. So if you can play that, you then look for things which are sort of grade 6.
Okay.
Grade 7 will be a little bit more challenging, maybe Capuzzi concerto. So
there's two, right? One in D major, and what's the other one?
F major. Well, the D major is the original.
D major is the original.
The F major was done by Francis Baines.
Okay.
Who was a British player, and he went into early music.
Okay.
He was a pioneer of that. But in his day, D major just seemed a little bit too low.
Yeah.
And G major just seemed a little bit too high.
Okay.
Because F major is such a horrible key to play in. I remember learning that one when I was learning.
The F major?
Yeah, and it's an orchestral player's key, that one.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite work. Because if you're in G major, you've got harmonics and open strings.
Sure.
In F major, you have none of them.
Yeah.
It's a strange key, but again, it's a nice little piece.
Yeah.
And if you like F major, play it in F majors.
Yeah.
I did both because I had D major with one teacher and F major with another.
Okay.
But again, he was another passionate one who decided to find this piece that nobody else knew about.
Okay.
And create an edition.
Yeah.
Do you know the Bach suites arranged by Samuel Sterling? May 1950s.
Yeah. But there's two keys, right? There's two keys that, like, there's the original, and then the other ones, the other version that's like a fourth lower or something. Yeah.
Well, Sam Sterling was an orchestral bass player, and he I don't know how many hundreds of hours he spent working out the right keys for these suites, and then transcribing them for a bass player in the 1950s. Yeah. And he found a publisher. So they've been in print since probably the late 1950s.
Yeah.
And so I'm absolutely astounded that, he's typical of the bass world, or we fanatics who just spend all this time. Because there's no hope of great wealth or riches for any of this.
No.
But he just wanted to do it. Yeah. And I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I think, so much of this it's all that, it's all a labor of love. The 3 hours in the practice room, that's a labor of love. This podcast, a labor of love.
Exactly.
It's all just because you got to be around it, and talk to other people that are passionate about it.
Yeah, I'm always aiming for my students to play Bottesini, because that's suddenly when they realize why they practiced. Because suddenly, yes, this Bottesini Elegy is the first easy virtuoso piece they play.
Yeah.
And suddenly they can use the entire range of the bass. Yeah. And it's still challenging, but it's such a good piece that it's worth the effort.
Yeah.
And that's the first one really where they really feel like they've achieved something.
Yeah. I feel like I've never played it. I've heard it countless times and have several different recordings of it. But I've never dug into it. I feel like that is the standard of kind of like, okay, you got the Bottesini together. Cool. Like now you can move on to some really high advanced, but that's the Bottesini that's really the gateway into all of it.
He was amazing, Bottesini, because he changed how we play the bass. Before him, everything was scales and arpeggios and a few little harmonics.
Yeah.
And then suddenly he was singing on the bass and using all these harmonics that nobody had used before.
Right. So that was all new
Absolutely.
information. I know you're definitely more knowledgeable about that history than I am. So that all that was new information that he brought out.
Yeah. And he graduated from the Milan Conservatory. I think he graduated early. And a friend of his, Luigi Arditi, who's a violinist and composer, he said that Bottesini was fully formed when he left Conservatory. He said he'd never got any better. The only thing he gained was experience.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
But he was a real superstar of his day. I was reading about him the other day, and in a concert, he'd only play a couple of pieces because it had lots of soloists. So they'd have a very long concert. There'd be maybe a symphony, concerto, choral things, soloists. And there was one, and I think there were two singers, and they were used to being the stars of the concert. And yet Bottesini got more applause. and he had to keep going. And they were furious that the bass player had more applause than they did.
Sure.
And I think he was quite humble. I think he was just, I think he just played beautifully and fantastically. Yeah. I don't think he was a diva or anything like that. I think he was, from what I've read, I think he was just a really decent chap.
That's amazing. I haven't done any kind of research on him as a person or profiling, understanding what is, I know the main pieces that he's written, and that's.
Yeah, but I think that's a good way in. And I think it's interesting because I always tell my students, they get so bored. Yeah. Okay, what are we playing today? Bottesini. Okay, tell me 5 things about Bottesini. Yeah. Oh no! I make them tell me 5 things. Yeah. And I had a new student from Malaysia, and he was doing a study by Edward Nanny. I think he was doing the first virtuoso study. Okay, so tell me 5 things about Edward Nanny. So I'd done this 400 times, and he had to go in for an assessment to play these pieces. And the adjudicator said, "Okay, so tell me about Edward Nanny." Yeah. And I said, "Thank you. That's 10 bottles of wine to me." That's fantastic. That's why I do it.
10. 10.
And he sent me a Christmas card. And he said, "I haven't bought you the wine yet." But I think it's so important that we know where we've come from.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
But I'm sure you're the same. Sometimes people talk to you after a concert, and you feel like such an idiot if you've got no idea about anything you've just played.
Yeah. That happened to me a few weeks ago. I was doing a jazz duo gig with a guitar player, and someone asked me, like, what was not the last one you played, but the one right before that? What was that? And I just look at the guitar player. I'm like, do you remember? like it took us, not a long time, but when you're standing there thinking and it's dead air, 20 seconds feels like a long time. Like just trying to,
Yeah. So I test them all the time, even the young ones. Yeah. Tell me 5 things about. Yeah. And I just think it's amazing then, because I said later in life, you will email me and say, "Thank you so much." Sure. Because I was playing this piece, and afterwards somebody asked me about the composer, and I had 5 bits of information. Yeah.
What how deep does that go? Did any information, like where they were born, when they died, or 5 pieces?
Things like Bottesini. So he was Italian. Yeah. He was 19th century. Mm-hmm. He wrote operas. Yeah. He wrote lots of pieces of double bass. He's called the Paganini of the double bass. Who was Paganini? What does the Paganini of the double bass mean? Right. It means he played the bass like a violin. He was the greatest bass player, like Paganini was the greatest violin. Just little things, just as a starting point.
Now, I'm always fascinated by the innovators of the instrument. What was and I'm not saying this to put you on the spot or challenge your Bottesini knowledge, but was one of his parents a violin player, or where did he get this lyricism that was in his blood? He must have absorbed that from another instrument.
Yeah, his father was a composer and clarinetist. Okay. And Bottesini, he played violin first. And he went he went to the Milan Conservatory, the scholarships, 2 scholarships, one for, I think, bassoon and one for bass.
Okay.
And because he'd been a string player, he thought he'd try the bass.
Yeah.
And so he had a few lessons and then went and played. And there's a famous story that he went and played for the panel. And he said, "Gentlemen, I know I'm playing out of tune, but when I know where to put my fingers, I won't play out of tune again." And they said he didn't. Is that amazing?
What I also love is, I believe, if I remember what I've researched, which that's another problem I have is retention, but the jazz innovator Jimmy Blanton, who was the first one to solo, take bass solos, also a violin player first.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I think that I'm fascinated by that connection.
But certainly with Bottesini, because he was 19th century Italy, everything was opera.
Right.
So he spent his whole life in the opera house, whether composer, conductor, bass player.
Sure.
So he was surrounded by opera.
Right.
So that must have rubbed off on him as well.
No, absolutely. He just absorbed all that, and hearing all the singers, and hearing just this incredibly lyrical, all these melody lines all the time.
Yeah.
That had to have, he must have just soaked that up. That's fascinating.
I found a lot of my students come from the cello. And it's amazing how they're not bad cellists, but you put a bass in their hands and you can just see they're bass players.
Okay.
They just, it just suits them.
Yeah.
I've just got a new student, and she's a harp player and the cello, and she's much better on cello than she is on bass, but she's a bass player through and through.
Yeah.
She's got the right mentality, attitude.
Right.
She just looks so right with the bass.
Yeah. Yeah. Does she feels more comfortable with it? Like, does she?
Yeah, she's fine. She sent me a lovely Christmas card, and she said, "Thank you for showing me what a brilliant instrument the bass is."
Nice.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
I was really worried, because you're coming from the cello, which is all this fantastic repertoire, makes this beautiful sound.
Sure.
And she's coming to the bass.
Yeah.
And I usually apologize to the parents. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He's a bass player. Because it affects them, doesn't it? They have to carry the bass around. And
sure.
whatever.
You got to go buy one or rent one or whatever they're going to do. Yeah. Yeah. Probably get a new car to get fitted in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the student, it doesn't affect them at all, but the parent.
Yeah.
They're the ones who have to make all the judgments.
Right. What are some of your favorite pieces you like to introduce students to? Besides the Bottesini, because
I like a lot of contemporary music or music written now of our time. I think there's some fantastic music being written, and I'm a great friend of Teppo Hauta-Aho, Finnish bass player. He died in November. He was 80. We were great friends for 20 odd years, and we both studied in Prague with the same teacher, Posta. He was there in the 1960s. I was there in the 1980s. And Teppo's written more pieces for bass than anybody alive. It's amazing. Wow. And he was a jazz player, classical, improviser, contemporary. And he put all those things into his music.
Interesting.
And it really resonates with the students.
Yeah.
They absolutely love it. And sometimes I've got students who may be a little bit more like jazz. So I can find them pizzicato pieces by Teppo.
Yeah.
But I just love introducing things which sometimes maybe not so well known. Yeah. Which is fascinating. But I love the solo repertoire, because if it's just solo bass, you are the soloist and the accompanist at the same time.
Right.
There's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
So you have to tell a story because there's no one else there to do it.
Right.
You have to find a way of making this music sing, of finding the architecture of the piece, how it fits together, how you communicate it to an audience. And also with a lot of contemporary music, there's a lot more space for color and atmosphere, which I like.
How do you go about communicating that to students, to teaching the storytelling element?
I think it's just, you introduce it, the first couple of lessons, just so they understand that they're telling a story. Mm-hmm. And we've only got the two hands. We haven't got any words.
Right.
So we have to think how we use the bow speed, bow placement, vibrato, the width of the vibrato, the amplitude. Sure. So there are lots of different things. Learning to breathe. You know, you have to breathe at some point. And it's just working out. I wrote a piece called Sahara. It was a piece used for a competition in Spain. And it stays in bass clef. But you wouldn't think it stayed in bass clef because it sounds more interesting than that. And the first 4 notes are just pizzicato notes. Dee-da-da-da. And I play it to a student and I say, this is how I meant it. And there's just a silence. They can't believe that with 4 notes, you grab the audience by the throat.
Sure.
And they suddenly, wow, that's what I can do. I can do that. I was talking tonight. I'd written a piece called George Meets Teppo. This is for Helsinki. And so it uses collegno, sul-ponticello, harmonics, false harmonics, things like that. So I was talking a lot about color. And a lot of my music is sectionalized, quite small chunks of music, and then something else. And it's how you put it together. And that's your job as the musician, is how you tell this story and where the full stops and commas are. You don't say full stop. Is it period? Yeah. But you have
punctuation,
to have,
where the punctuation
but you have to have full stops and commas.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't just keep going. You have to learn where to breathe. You have to learn where to generate these, just hold it a little bit more. And then why do I'm always talking about color, always talking about, because the audience do recognize it. They might not know what it is. They might not know what they're hearing.
Yeah.
But they can recognize there's something here, which is special. And if you introduce that when they're quite young, it stays with them. It's they're always thinking about color and sound and communication.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. Cool. So what's the next thing on your what's the next thing you're going to get off your list? What are you wrapping up here currently?
The next one, I've just started a new piece. I started it on Thursday.
Okay.
And that's a solo piece. It's called A Song for Teppo.
Okay.
As I mentioned, he died in November. And I started, and it's I think it's going in the wrong direction. I played it again today. It's suddenly become too big.
Okay.
I don't want it. It's quite sad. It's in B minor, but it has a nice resonance about it.
Yeah.
But it's. I think it's going in the wrong direction. So I'll keep the core of it, which is I like, and then just get rid of that bit and then start again. I always take it when I'm teaching tomorrow, and I always take my music with me because I might have 5 minutes or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's brilliant. I have a fantastic big teaching room, and it's quite conducive to composing. I do a lot of my composing.
Oh, nice.
I just put it on the music stand, and if there's no student there, I'll just get it out and try it and see where it's going. So that's the next one. And then I've got no idea.
Do you compose on the bass or do you compose on the piano?
Usually on the bass.
Okay.
I like, but one of my people was asking today where the ideas come from. So I've got no idea. The Teppo one just came in B minor.
Yeah.
That was so strange. Because I usually write in A minor.
Okay.
Because I get the open A string and harmonics. And
sure.
Left-hand pizzicato, but B minor is a slightly different feel.
Yeah.
But I nearly always use a flattened seventh, which
Okay.
I'm sure is a mode or something.
Yeah.
But I like a flattened seventh.
Just in any scale. I mean, that could be a couple of modes.
Many of my pieces have flattened sevenths.
Okay. Well, what's going on with the thirds?
The third, I've no idea. I wish I knew.
maybe you're just writing in sus chords.
I'm sure I am.
With this dominant 7 sus chord.
I tell you what, maybe I'm a genius and don't know it. Yeah.
Perfect.
But what's interesting is talking to jazz people is you have far more knowledge of all these things than we do. As a classical player, I just play what's on the page.
Sure.
So it's always fascinating talking to a jazz player because you are quite analytical and you know so much more about what you're doing than we do. Well, it's fascinating.
I mean, I kind of just want to make a jazz joke and we like to talk like we know what we're doing. We like to analyze what everybody else is doing. Who knows? Who knows if we know what we're doing?
Yeah. Well, I always say I know nothing. That's the best way, isn't it?
Man, that's at the end of the day, it's all the same. We're all just trying to get something out there,
Yeah.
play something.
I always say that every day. I try my best.
Yeah.
And I fail every day of my life because I'm a human being. But I'll get up tomorrow, and I'll try my best to get tomorrow.
That's it, man. I mean, you're doing some things right. You're doing some things right. You have.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's looking good. What besides the recitalmusic.net, what and teaching? What are you doing performance-wise?
Last year, I didn't have one concert.
Well, nobody did.
Yeah, it was amazing. And this year, they've started coming. It was nice because I've travelled since 1985.
Okay.
Internationally.
Yeah.
And I really didn't know how much travelling I'd been doing and how tired I was until this lockdown.
Yeah.
Before lockdown, we've been to Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland, Belgium. I should have been in Moscow. Visa problems, I couldn't get there. I should have been in Italy because of COVID. I couldn't get there. And that was just in the first 3 months of 2020.
Yeah.
And so suddenly to have time was glorious.
Right.
But the concerts have started coming in again this year, which is really nice. And I enjoy, my wife is a singer, professional singer.
Okay.
So we work together a lot.
Nice.
And I like finding opportunities where I can get my students to come and play.
Sure.
Sometimes the younger ones, it gives them an opportunity. Sometimes my ex-students who come back and we work as a duo or something. I'm back in Italy in June teaching and playing.
Okay.
The Institute, which is nice. And then there are a couple more later this year which haven't been confirmed. So there's always something which I'm putting a recording together of 3 basses. Me, bass player from America, bass player from Turkey.
Okay.
But you can't make many plans still. It's quite difficult, isn't it?
I know. You don't know how it's all gonna shake. I mean, you guys over there in the UK, I think you guys are probably you're starting to draw some lines and be like, okay, we're not, we're
opening up a lot more now.
Yeah, exactly. I think the rest of the world is taking notice of that.
Yeah, just learning to live with it.
Yeah. Because
at some point, we have to learn to live with this.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the thing, it's not going anywhere. We have to coexist with it on some level.
We went to the cinema the other day, and we still wore masks inside. Sure. And I think I've only been to the cinema twice since the first lockdown.
Okay.
It was the second time. So we're still a bit cautious, but things are okay. Things are not so bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool, man.
Yeah.
Dude, David, thanks so much. Thanks for taking the time to do this. Yeah, I appreciate it. Stay on the line, though. There's something I want to talk to you about, but well, for my editor, we'll end the episode here. Is it cool if I put links to your site on the Bass Shed so they can go?
Thank you. Yes, please. I'll do the same.
I don't have, what I really do with the Bass Shed, the podcast was kind of an afterthought. The first thing is I transcribe jazz bass lines and solos, and then stuff for electric bass, James Brown bass lines, Motown stuff, whatever. But it's a transcription website.
Yeah. Right.
But I don't have a lot of, other than my transcriptions, there's not much out there for the double bass, but I would like to, if you're comfortable with it.
And do you teach as well?
I do this. Teaching bass in Los Angeles is difficult. Maybe America, I don't know. Everybody goes to YouTube. Nobody seems to find value in having a one-on-one teacher. I mean, I started teaching professionally when I was 17. So I started teaching young, and then when I got into doing the online internet thing, I did not want to teach beginner bass lessons anymore. Like I can't do it. I'm not excited about that. And so if I'm not going to be excited, then I'm going to be a bad teacher.
When I first started teaching, you have to teach all comers. Yeah. So there are lots of beginners.
Sure.
And one of my first teaching jobs was 5 mini basses.
Okay.
Because they realized they had no bass players. So they started with young, which is a great way. And then for many years, I didn't teach beginners.
Yeah.
And then over the last 5, 6, 7 years, I've inherited a few beginners, and I love it.
Really?
Because now I don't follow the rules.
Right.
So they're playing in neck block positions really quickly, and they're learning about harmonics, and they're learning about col legno, and I can write them a piece.
Right.
So it's not boring like it was when I first started teaching.
Right. When you're taking someone through Samandal or something.
Yeah. So now I love it, and I'm going to start a foundation. That's my next plan, really. And part of it will be mini bass.
Okay.
It's to offer free lessons to maybe 4 players a year.
Yeah.
And do that for 10 years.
Okay.
And so the 4 of them, and then they graduate onto the second year, and then another 4.
Sure.
Just because the beginners need more help. The more you advance, the more help there is already for you.
Yeah. How much do you run into students? I mean, as electric bass players, they can find things online everywhere, whether the information is the best or not. They're just going to find it free on YouTube. Do you run into that a lot on double bass too?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
No, it's different. It's I think people appreciate the one-to-one tuition.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more expensive.
Sure.
But they get value for money because they're in the same room as you, and they're getting all the right information.
Yeah.
And I love teaching. I absolutely love it. I taught 3 students. I had 2 adults today and I think 14, 15-year-old.
Okay.
And it's amazing. They all play my music. It's so funny.
Yeah.
And it's I don't make them play my music. They choose to if they want to.
That's cool.
But it was so nice. They're all doing something different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's talk special. About so many more things than just technique.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think that really get some drive. The my approach is similar to yours, except I don't write the music. But I think if you want to be a great, let's say, electric bass player, the best way to be great is study with the greats, right? That's what anybody would go to a conservatory for or whatever, because the electric bass is such a young instrument, but has progressed so quickly. You're going to find your school on records. So that's why I transcribe. Is like, let's really dig into how some of these geniuses created their bass lines and did this stuff. And we'll talk about technique. But I don't know what it is. There's something about the electric bass that they just want a quick payoff.
I think the electric bass, I think you can teach yourself to get to a fair level with no effort. Yeah. Whereas a string instrument like a bass, it doesn't work like that.
No, it does not work like that.
Yeah.
It's because so much of the electric bass is done for you. You tune the string, then it's in tune.
Yeah.
You soon as you finger the note here, you just generated a sound because the pickup generates the sound. You're not producing the sound. You're not producing it.
Does it for you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's there's this quick payoff mentality, and that comes across with all the students too. Is they just want to be their hero, because they haven't really worked out, just how to stand with the instrument. I remember learning double bass. I just had to practice standing with it. Just everything's balanced, everything's comfortable. Okay, keep this straight. Blah blah blah. Like I had to just practice my stance.
Yeah, there's so much with a string instrument to learn. It's a lifetime's work, really, isn't it?
Yeah. It's all of it is, and then you get into music.
I know. But I think that's what I like. Everything is always interesting. It's endlessly fascinating to me.
Yeah, it is.
And I'm always learning something new, and that's what I enjoy.
Yeah,
the fact that I know nothing really.
Yeah,
but I'm still willing to learn. And that's what I enjoy.
Well, I have you here. What would be give me a piece to start on, and then I want to have a lesson with you. I want you to check in on my classical playing.
I'll send you a piece.
Okay. Yeah, send me a piece.
I'll send you a couple of pieces.
Okay.
And we'll just do a lesson. And I'd like my bass.
Yeah. I'd like to hear your take on it and get your get a lesson from it, because I've been dusting off the bow and getting back into it. And I already have the idea for like the next. I just wrote a record, my first debut record.
Fantastic.
So I got that kind of out of me, like all that music's out of me, and now my mind's thinking about what the next one's gonna be, and I want to incorporate a lot more with the bow and do some.
The thing I would tell my students is, if you play badly, nobody dies. There's no there's no earthquake. You maybe just played out of tune.
Right.
But if you play out of tune, you can learn to play in tune.
Yeah.
Because you can work out where not to go.
Sure.
Because if you go there, it'll be out of tune.
Yeah.
But nobody dies, so you may as well try your best.
Yeah. Nobody dies. Great.
Yeah. It's a really good way of looking at it.
Yeah. Right. Before you do anything, just ask yourself, does anybody die? If the answer is yes, don't do it. If the answer is no, give it a shot.
I die a little bit inside, obviously.
Yeah. My ego is obliterated.
Yeah. Would you mind if I took a screenshot?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Right.
I will have there will be a little clip of this on YouTube also, just to drive traffic to the podcast because people like the visuals. But yeah, go ahead.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. No, it's been great, Ryan. Thank you so much.
Man, my pleasure. Let's definitely stay in touch.
I looked at your website and I thought, why has he asked me? I have nothing in common with any of these people.
No, I have a couple classical players on there. The principal bassist from Brussels. I think she's in Brussels.
Yeah.
Assistant principal in Colorado. I studied with him for a little while.
Who's that?
Nicholas Recuber.
No, I don't know.
He just did. He just did a book of 14. I'll send you a copy to it. He just published a book, or had a book published by I forgot who. Claire Fisher, maybe.
Yeah, Carl Fisher.
Yeah, Carl Fisher. Not that long ago, there was something he transcribed. It's fascinating. I haven't played through it yet, but
this is what's interesting now is so many more people are interested in writing for bass, transcribing for bass, and so it's like a golden age for the instrument. We're so lucky to be part of this.
Yeah, that's a great attitude. Yeah. And I really appreciate you doing this because there's only so many times I can talk to an electric bass player, and we're gonna talk about the same things. You know, like so. I mean, to the point where like I stopped talking to bass players. There's been a couple episodes where like the guys weren't bass players. So I was tired of having the same conversation. This is boring for me. Like whatever. I want to talk to people that I'm excited to talk to, that I'm intrigued by, and you're one of them. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We'll be in touch for sure.
That's great. But thanks, Ryan.
All right, thanks, David.
I'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, folks, that was my talk with David Hayes. Did you catch it? You know, at the setup, I couldn't pronounce the dude's name, the principal of the Czech Philharmonic. David mentioned it a few times. I can't. Sometimes I just can't with names. I don't know. It's a mental block. David Hayes is definitely going to be back on the podcast. He sent me some music, actually, to check out that I'm going to shed, and I'm going to do a little lesson with him. I'm going to have him take a look at my interpretation of some pieces he wrote. I'm excited about that. Definitely stop by recitalmusic.net. Find some music there that you're interested in. There's something for everybody. And even electric players, you know, like I remember back in the day, there's like Bach for bass came out. There's no reason why not to just hop on board and go check out some just straight up music that was purposed for the double bass and just play it on electric bass. So even if you are an electric bassist, stop by, check it out, give you something new to read, you know, maybe get you to think about music in a different way, work on phrasing in a new way. I like what David had to say about the electric bass, and I fully agree with him. Just the instant payoff that exists with that instrument that does not exist with the double bass. I remember back in the day listening to double bassists talk about these were guys that would double between, you know, acoustic, double bass, and electric, and how they would talk about how to generate a sound on electric. And then after I really got into playing the double bass, taking a lot of those ideas from generating a sound on the instrument first and not letting, you know, the bass produce the sound, but I produce the sound. I think that those are things you can take away as an electric player from this, and also shed some of the material for double bass. And think about it that way as it relates to phrasing. Think through fingerings and all the things you would do vibrato, all the things that double basses are thinking about when they're preparing a piece. So there's something here for everybody, folks. Go to recitalmusic.net, check it out. Thanks again to David. If you are enjoying the Bass Shed podcast, please hit subscribe wherever you are listening to it. You can find me at facebook.com/The Bass Shed, on Twitter at Bass Shed, on Instagram at The Bass Shed. And as always, you can email me at Ryan@TheBassShed with questions, comments, rants, whatever you got. I'm here for it. That's all I got for this one, folks. That's all I got. Thanks for listening, and I will catch you on the next one in a minute.